Have you ever wondered what happens to those who dare to conquer Mount Everest? This video delves into the chilling disappearances that have plagued the mountain for decades. Real stories of climbers who vanish without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and haunting legacies. They set out with courage, with dreams of standing atop the world. But somewhere between the clouds and the summit, something went wrong. From legendary pioneers swallowed by snow, to modern climbers tracked by GPS yet never seen again, Mount Everest is more than a mountain. It's a place where the line between life and death is thinner than the air itself. These are 5 true stories that defy logic and resist closure. Welcome to Everest's most terrifying mystery, the ones who never came back. They disappeared in 1924, and to this day, the world still asks the same question. Did George Mallory and Andrew Irvine reach the summit of Mount Everest before anyone else? In the summer of 1924, long before Gore-Tex, satellite phones, or fixed ropes, 2 men set out into the unknown. George Mallory, already a seasoned climber, and the younger Andrew "Sandy" Irvine, a brilliant engineer and ambitious mountaineer, embarked on what was then the most daring summit attempt in human history. They would never return. George Mallory had already made 2 prior attempts to summit Everest. In the public imagination, he was bold, charismatic, poetic, a man who had famously replied, "Because it's there," when asked why he wanted to climb the mountain. Irvine, in contrast, was 22 years old, barely out of Oxford, but he was a technical genius, known for modifying the oxygen systems that would be used on the expedition. Mallory saw potential in him, not just as companion, but as a key to making the impossible possible. Their final summit bid began on June 8, 1924. The pair were last seen by teammate Noel Odell through a break in the clouds, ascending what appeared to be the second step, a technical rock face at over 8,500 meters. Odell described it as a fleeting glimpse. 2 small figures, moving with determination, still climbing upward. After that, the mountain swallowed them. In the days following their disappearance, the remaining team members waited, hoped, then mourned. With time, Mallory and Irvine became legends, etched into mountaineering folklore. Did they perish on the way up, or did they die descending after reaching the summit? That question haunted generations of climbers and historians alike. Over the decades, dozens of expeditions combed the slopes of Everest looking for clues. Snow, wind, and time had erased much, but some traces remained. In 1933, an ice axe was found near the first step, believed to belong to Irvine. Later, rumors circulated of a body spotted high on the mountain, perfectly preserved in the ice. But it wasn't until 1999 that the mystery reignited. An expedition led by American climber and researcher Conrad Anker set out to find answers. Their search area was based on old photographs, Odell sighting, and elevation estimates. On May 1st, 1999, near 8,155 meters on the north face, they made a chilling discovery, a body. It lay face down in the rocks, frozen in time. The clothes were from the 1920s. The skeletal remains were remarkably intact. A rope injury around the waist suggested a fall, and a broken leg confirmed trauma. It was George Mallory. In his pockets were personal effects, a watch, a pocket knife, letters, goggles. But one thing was missing, his camera. Mallory had promised to take a photograph of his wife Ruth on the summit. If he had made it, the photo would likely have been on his person, and the camera still missing, possibly with Irvine. The 1999 find reignited debates. Could Mallory and Irvine have reached the summit? Some experts believe yes. Based on the technology of the time and Mallory's known climbing ability, it's plausible they could have climbed the second step. Irvine's modified oxygen system might have helped extend their reach beyond expectations. Others are skeptical. They point to the technical difficulty of the route, the lack of supplemental oxygen knowledge, and the clothing. Mallory and Irvine wore tweed, hobnail boots, and wool gloves, effective for their era, but primitive by today's standards. Still, the mystery endures because there is no proof they didn't succeed. In the years since, multiple teams have tried to locate Irvine's body and the missing vest pocket Kodak camera he carried. In 2001, 2010, and 2019, expeditions scoured potential fall lines, ridge lines, and crevasses. Drones and modern GPS tracking help narrow the search grid, but Irvine remains missing. Some climbers have reported sensing a strange stillness near the site where Mallory was found, a feeling of being watched, a shift in the wind that brings whispers with it. Whether imagined or real, Everest has a way of keeping its secrets close. Regardless of whether Mallory and Irvine reach the top, their story is eternal. Their ambition paved the way for future generations. Their courage, their willingness to risk everything for the dream of standing atop the world, made them legends. Mount Everest has claimed over 300 lives since the first expeditions. Some are still visible, climbers in bright jackets from more recent decades. Others, like Mallory, emerged decades later to tell silent tales. And some, like Irvine, vanish entirely, leaving only theories, footprints, and cold, echoing winds. As of today, no one can say with certainty whether they were the first to reach the summit, but in many ways, they were the first to make the world believe it was possible. In the high, thin air of Everest, where oxygen is rare and time stands still, their legacy endures, etched into the ice and rock, waiting for someone to find the final piece of the puzzle. Or maybe the mountain prefers it this way. Because sometimes legends are more powerful when they remain unsolved. He wasn't supposed to become a landmark, but for nearly 2 decades, every climber on the northeast ridge of Mount Everest passed by his body. Huddled in a limestone alcove at 8,500 meters, just below the summit, it became one of the most recognizable and haunting sights on the mountain. They called him Green Boots. For years, no one knew his name. But now, most believe that Green Boots was Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber who disappeared during the 1996 Everest Disaster, one of the most tragic and controversial climbing seasons in history. Tsewang Paljor was a member of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, ITBP, part of a 3-man team attempting to summit Everest from the north side. They had trained extensively, acclimatized properly, and aimed to plant the Indian flag atop the world on May 10, 1996. That same day, on the southern face, disaster was brewing. Blizzards, bottlenecks, and poor communication would claim the lives of 8 climbers from multiple teams. Paljor and his team pushed toward the summit in improving weather, unaware of the chaos unfolding across the mountain. At 6:30 p.m. on May 10th, according to radio logs, Paljor made contact. He had reached the summit, but after that, nothing more was heard. The next morning, only one member of the Indian team, Subedar Tsewang Samanla, was found alive at a lower camp. He died soon after. Paljor and his 2 teammates vanished into the thin air of Everest. Shortly after the storm cleared, a Japanese climbing team passed through a limestone cave just below the summit. Inside, they saw a body, curled in the fetal position, back against the wall. Green Koflak boots jutting out into the trail. He had no gloves, no oxygen, just frozen limbs, a bowed head, and a death mask twisted by wind and cold. The body was reported but not recovered. At that altitude, even lifting a boot requires effort. And so he remained, year after year. As more climbers attempted the northeast ridge, they passed him. He became a checkpoint. a silent witness to the ambitions and sacrifices of everyone who dared pass. No one knew his name, but everyone remembered the boots. Green boots remained largely undisturbed until 2006, when another Everest tragedy thrust him back into global headlines. David Sharp, a British climber, attempted a solo summit bid. On his descent, he collapsed inside the same cave, barely meters from Green boots. More than 30 climbers passed him that day. Some thought he was already dead. Others, unsure or unequipped to help, chose to keep moving. By the time someone tried to assist, it was too late. Sharp froze to death next to Green boots. The world erupted in outrage. Had Everest become so commercial, so brutal, that a man could die in plain sight while others walked by? Was it the mountain's cruelty or humanity's indifference? And in the center of it all was Green boots, now not just a marker, but a symbol of moral failure and uncomfortable truths. It wasn't until years later that climbers and journalists traced his identity. Through climbing records, interviews, and timelines, most agreed Green boots was likely Tsewang Paljor. He was born in Sakti, a small village in Ladakh. Known for his discipline and calm demeanor, Paljor dreamed of representing his country on the highest peak in the world. When he joined the ITBP Everest expedition, it was a matter of honor. He was 28 years old when he died. His family learned of his possible fate only through whispers. They never received his body, only silence. To them, he wasn't Green boots. He was a son, a brother, a patriot. In 2014, something strange happened. Green boots vanished. Some speculated the body had been removed or buried under fresh snow. Others believed the Chinese authorities had moved it in preparation for new climbing infrastructure. Then, in 2017, climbers reported seeing the familiar figure again, slightly shifted but unmistakable. In the death zone, nothing stays still for long, not even the dead. The story of Tsewang Paljor, if it is indeed him, is more than just a tragic end. It's a stark reminder of Everest's brutal truth. At those altitudes, survival trumps sympathy. The mountain doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how skilled, how strong, or how young. It takes without warning, and it leaves behind what can't be carried. Today, fewer climbers speak of Green boots openly. His presence is both a ghost and a guilt, a question whispered in the minds of those who pass. Would I stop? But in every photo, every story told on the trail, and every silence that lingers in that limestone alcove, he remains. Not just as a waypoint, but as a warning. Everest does not forget, and neither should we. It began with clear skies. May 10, 1996. More than 30 climbers from multiple commercial expeditions set out toward the summit of Mount Everest, energized by months of preparation and a narrow weather window. The air was thin, the summit close. Spirits were high. No one expected the mountain to turn against them before the day was over. By the time the blizzard hit that night, 8 people would be dead. Others would be left frostbitten, broken, and traumatized. And the world would witness, for the first time in modern history, what it truly meant to die on Everest. Some say the mountain has never been the same since. 2 major teams, Rob Hall's Adventure Consultants and Scott Fisher's Mountain Madness, were among those attempting the summit that day. Their climbers included a wide range of experience levels, from professionals to determined amateurs with dreams of glory. By early afternoon, delays had already pushed schedules dangerously late. Bottlenecks formed at the Hillary Step. Fixed ropes weren't in place. Oxygen was running low, but many kept going. At 2 p.m., Rob Hall radioed base camp. He had reached the summit with Doug Hansen, a postal worker attempting his second try after failing the year before. Hall promised they'd begin their descent immediately, but they didn't. Within 2 hours, the weather collapsed. The temperature plunged. Wind surged to hurricane strength. Visibility dropped to near zero. The descent route disappeared into white oblivion, and the dying began. That night, stranded near the south summit, Hall stayed with Doug Hansen, who was fading fast. Hall radioed for help, refusing to leave his client behind. His voice crackled over the airwaves. "Please don't worry too much." Hours later, he made one last call to his pregnant wife Jan back in New Zealand. "We're not going to make it," he said. "I love you. Sleep well, my sweetheart." They never heard from him again. Scott Fisher, suffering from exhaustion and high-altitude cerebral edema, collapsed higher up the slope. His Sherpa, Lopsang Jangbu, tried to help, but Fisher was incoherent, delusional. He died in the snow, his body later found with one arm outstretched toward the sky. Other climbers were stranded in the open. Guides Beckweathers and Yasuko Namba lay unconscious in the snow, assumed dead. But something strange happened. The next morning, Weathers woke up, blind, frostbitten, delirious, but alive. He stumbled back to camp like a man resurrected. His face was black with frostbite, fingers stiff and dying. He would go on to survive one of Everest's worst nights with no shelter and no oxygen. Some Sherpas later claimed they heard voices at night, whispers in the wind, names spoken in the storm. Others swore they saw a movement above Camp 4, where no one should have been. The mountain wasn't just deadly, it was haunted. Those who lived carried more than scars. They carried questions. John Krakauer, a journalist with Adventure Consultants, would go on to write Into Thin Air, a haunting memoir of the tragedy. He recalled missing people by minutes, mistakes in judgment, and decisions that couldn't be undone. Some blamed the commercialization of Everest. Clients who paid tens of thousands, expecting a guaranteed summit. Others blamed poor coordination between teams. But no explanation ever felt complete. How could so many die within shouting distance of safety? Why did certain survivors remember things differently? Why did some say they saw figures walking nearby when no one else was accounted for? Was it hypoxia, trauma, or something the mountain kept hidden in the snow? Today, the remains of many who died in 1996 are still on Everest. Rob Hall's body is frozen in a sleeping position, roped to the mountain near the south summit. Scott Fisher's body was moved off the main route, but remains on the mountain. Yasuko Namba's corpse lay near Camp 4 for years, a grim reminder visible to every climber. Only Beck Weathers returned home, though barely. He lost his nose, right hand, and most of his left fingers. But he survived, and he claimed, during interviews, that during the night he heard someone call his name, not from base camp, but from nearby. He was alone. The 1996 Everest Disaster changed how people viewed the mountain. It wasn't just a test of strength anymore. It was a place where nature, and perhaps something more, could break even the strongest spirit. The wind on Everest has a voice. It carries names, echoes, regrets. And for those who return, the sounds linger far longer than the climb. There are no gravestones above 8,000 meters. Only footsteps, flags, and the unburied dead. And the ghosts of 1996 still watch, not to frighten, but to remind. In May 1998, Francys Arsentiev made history. She became the first American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. No small feat, no safety net. But the mountain doesn't reward achievement. It punishes hesitation, miscalculation, and pride. 3 days after her triumph, Francys lay dying on a slope just below the summit, alone, frozen, and whispering for help that would never come. This is her story. Francys, a 40-year-old mother from Telluride, Colorado, wasn't a professional athlete, but she was fierce, methodical, and determined. Along with her husband, Sergei Arsentiev, she had set out to make history by summiting Everest without oxygen, one of the last pure mountaineering challenges. The couple acclimatized well, moving slowly, respecting the altitude. But delays and poor weather pushed their summit attempt late into the season. They made multiple ascents to higher camps, battling brutal winds and exhaustion. On May 22, 1998, they made their final push. Francys reached the top, but reaching the summit is only half the climb. Descending without supplemental oxygen is where many Everest climbers meet their end. The body breaks down faster, the brain falters, judgment slips, muscles fail. On the descent, Francys became disoriented. She collapsed several times, unable to continue. Sergei, realizing she wouldn't make it down on her own, stashed her in the snow and went for help. He never returned. On May 23rd, a team of Uzbek climbers encountered Francys. She was sitting upright in the snow, pale and barely responsive. Her face was frostbitten, her eyes swollen. She murmured broken phrases. "Don't leave me. Why is this happening?" They gave her oxygen, tried to move her, but she couldn't stand. They stayed for nearly an hour, sacrificing their summit dreams, but ultimately left her behind. They had no choice. At that altitude, saving someone can cost you your own life. The same day, another group found Sergei Arsentiev's body far below the route. He had fallen, likely trying to bring supplies to his wife and night. He'd missed a step, stumbled in the dark, and died instantly. The tragedy was complete. 2 climbers, 1 summit, no survivors. For years, Francys remained where she died, just below the summit, visible to every climber who passed. She became known as the Sleeping Beauty of Everest. Some said her figure looked peaceful. Others described it as haunting. A woman in purple down suit, frozen lips parted, eyes wide open. She wasn't just a reminder of the mountain's danger. She was a ghost in plain sight. Climbers later reported strange sensations when passing her, an urge to whisper, guilt for walking past, a feeling that the mountain was watching. In 2007, nearly a decade later, a team of climbers led by Ian Woodall and Kathy O'Dowd, who had seen Francys die in 1998 but were unable to save her, returned to give her dignity. They located her remains, conducted a small ceremony, and carefully moved her body off the main route. They wrapped her in an American flag. Francys Arsentiev would finally rest out of sight, but never out of memory. Francys' story isn't just about death. It's about love, ambition, and the terrible cost of chasing something higher. She climbed not for fame, but for the purity of it, for the discipline, the achievement, the thrill. And she died as many do on Everest, not from weakness, but from staying too long in a place where humans don't belong. Today, the wind near the summit still howls. It still echoes with broken voices. And somewhere beneath the snow, the mountain remembers the woman who didn't come back. In the age of drones, GPS, and satellite phones, you'd think people couldn't just vanish on Everest anymore. And yet they do. In recent years, a growing number of Chinese climbers, experienced, well-equipped, and often part of well-funded expeditions, have gone missing on Mount Everest under circumstances that remain disturbingly vague. Some disappear without a trace. Others are found too late, their last moments obscured by fog, rumor, and a mountain that still refuses to give answers. This is the story of Everest's modern ghosts. In May 2016, a 25-year-old Chinese climber named Wang Jingbo attempted a solo ascent from the north. Colonel reports vary. Some say he was separated from his group. Others say he pushed ahead alone, determined to make the summit without assistance. He was last seen near Camp 3, descending into a weather window that turned sharply by nightfall. He never came back. Search parties found no body, no gear, no trace. Some Sherpas said they saw him near the second step, moving quickly, talking to himself. One even claimed Wang had stopped to wave at him from a distance, but the area he pointed to was a sheer drop. To this day, no evidence of Wang's fate has been recovered. In 2018, a Chinese woman named Li Shui made headlines as part of a mixed team attempting to summit from the south side. Strong and well-trained, she had documented most of her climb on Chinese social media apps. Her final video was a selfie at Camp 4, her face cracked with frostbite, but smiling. Her last voice message to her family was short, almost robotic. "I will see the stars tonight." Then nothing. When her team returned, they reported she had slowed down, asked them to go ahead, and never followed. A later search found her sleeping bag 200 meters off-route in a snow hollow. It was torn, empty, tracks led away, then stopped. No body was ever found. Mountaineers and journalists have speculated about the rising number of modern disappearances, especially among solo Chinese climbers. Some blame high-altitude psychosis, hallucinations brought on by low oxygen. Others suggest equipment failure, miscommunication, or severe exhaustion. But there are darker whispers, too. Stories circulate about a ghost route, an old trail toward the summit now abandoned after too many unexplained deaths. Some climbers speak of strange lights near the northeast ridge on stormy nights. Others say the wind there sounds like whispering in Mandarin. Most chalk it up to exhaustion, but that doesn't explain the gaps. How can a climber live streaming one moment simply vanish the next? In one 2021 incident, a Chinese expedition member named Su Chong filmed his teammate, only known by the surname Lin, during a morning push to Camp 4. Lin could be seen adjusting his gear, waving, and turning to climb. An hour later, the footage shows Su reaching the next ridge. He pans his camera around, no Lin. Su's GPS tracker shows a steady ascent. Lin's cuts out at 10:43 a.m. A drone search found no movement, no fall path, no body. To this day, Lin is listed as presumed dead, but climbers in later seasons report seeing a figure sitting near that ridge at sunset, still silent, in a red jacket. When approached, the figure fades into the mist. One strange aspect of these modern disappearances is a digital trace they leave behind. Several missing climbers had active social media accounts. After their reported deaths, messages were sent from their phones, location tags that didn't match official routes. In some cases, their trackers pinged days later from locations kilometers off-trail, beyond the range of survival. Theories range from malfunctioning tech to hacking to something more inexplicable. In the modern age, we expect closure, data, proof. But on Everest, where satellites can't always see through storms and wind erases footprints in seconds, technology doesn't always win. For all our advances, Everest hasn't changed. It still swallows the strong. It still hides the lost. It still speaks in a language only the dead understand. The missing Chinese climbers of the last decade are not just names on a list. They are part of a growing mystery. Why, in a world of live streams and trackers, do people still vanish like ghosts? No one knows. And perhaps that's the point. Because Everest was never just a climb. It is a threshold. And sometimes those who cross it never return. Mount Everest stands taller than any peak on Earth, but its shadow is even longer. In its silent valleys and howling winds, it keeps the secrets of the missing. George Mallory, Green Boots, Francys Arsentiev, the ghosts of 1996, the modern climbers who vanished in the age of satellites. They are still up there, some buried in snow, some etched in memory, some never found at all. What draws humans to such danger? What pulls them upward, even knowing they might never return? Perhaps we climb not to conquer the mountain, but to understand ourselves. Let us know in the comments which story haunted you the most. And why do you think people still disappear up there in plain sight? Like, subscribe, and join us next time for more stories that echo beyond the edge of reason.